When should you use ever and when should you use never? What's the difference between within and between? Learn this and more on this episode of
Aprender Ingles con Reza y Craig. Hello, I'm Craig.
And hello, I'm Reza.
And what are we going to do, Reza, with over 45 years of our teaching experience?
Ooh, there's a lot we can do. We've seen a few things. We're going to do a podcast about ever and never and between and within. That's exactly what we'll do.
And at the same time, taking all aspects of your English up to the next level. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a good week. Everything's going well, very busy, but that's a good thing. And let's begin this episode with an email we've received from Patreon supporter Lucas Antonio. Hello, Lucas, from Santiago de Chile.
I'll read his email. Hi, Reza and Craig. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. Thanks, Lucas. In fact, I became a Patreon supporter a month ago, and now I'm going to buy the English course for level B2 because I fully trust in your way of teaching. Having said that, I'd like to ask some things. First, would you have a course in the future for an advanced level? I'd buy it immediately if you had one in the future. Craig, what's the answer to that?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Lucas Antonio, for your kind words. And what Lucas Antonio is referring to, what he's speaking about, are the courses that we sell on mansioningles.com. So if you go to store, S-T-O-R-E, .mansioningles.net, you'll see a first certificate B2 course at B2 level. And I think that's what Lucas Antonio is referring to. Do we have plans to make a more advanced course? Not at the moment, I'm afraid. I would like to, but to be honest, there are not enough hours in the day for us to create that course at the moment. So yes, it's something that I would really like to have on the website, but I don't think that's going to be happening next year. So very sorry, Lucas Antonio. If anybody else is interested, though, there are audio courses at different levels and other courses available at store.mansioningles.net. And we will put a link in the show notes if you're interested in having a look at the courses we have. inglespodcast.com/230 for a link to that website.
There's more in Lucas Antonio's email. He continues, secondly, I'd like to know the difference, or if there is any, when using between or within. For example, between these four options or within these four options. And finally, I'd like to know if there is any difference between saying round and around.
Thank you very much for your questions, Lucas Antonio. Very interesting. And I also like the way you signposted your email. Did you notice that, Reza, where he said first, blah, 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 secondly, blah, 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 and finally, blah, 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 blah. Very nicely written.
Well, Craig, it's a good question, isn't it? The
Yes.
first one about between or within.
I had to think about that. Yes. Between, in Spanish, you might say entre. For example, Chicago, the city, is between New York on the East Coast and Los Angeles, or Los Angeles, I should say, on the West Coast. So Chicago is between those two cities. Can you think of another example with between?
Yes, very often at the end of a meal in a restaurant, people say, why don't we split the bill? Divide the bill between the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Between the two of us.
Yeah, let's split it between the two of us.
You pay half and I pay half.
Within has the idea more of dentro or dentro de. For example, imagine it's dark, you're walking to this dark old house, and as we got closer to the old haunted house, we could hear a scratching. we could hear a scratching sound coming from within. So that idea within means inside the house. The noise was coming from within.
Or it can be used to refer to time expressions. For example, I'll lend you 100 euros, but I want it back within a week. That means no later than a week, within a week.
Another example, we got the inheritance when my uncle died. We received the inheritance within a year of his death, inside a year of his death, or within a year of his death.
As well as those scientific or technical or physical meanings of within, there's also a more kind of metaphorical meaning that we have. For example, although he was employed as an office worker, he always felt like a poet within, in himself, within.
So although I'm an English teacher, I could say I've always felt like a podcaster within. That means inside me, I'm a teacher on the outside, but inside me, there's a podcaster fighting to get out. Do you feel like a teacher within?
I feel like a teacher and a podcaster, both. Yeah, I've got them both within me. And a bit of a poet as well, actually, if I'm honest.
I know. Do you feel like a poet within, a writer?
Yeah, it's definitely within, though. It doesn't get out much, which is doing the world a favor, keeping it in there.
And a musician. You must feel like a musician within.
I occasionally let out the musician and cause people severe headaches.
No, he's very modest. You're being very modest. But Lucas Antonio's example was specifically the difference between or within these four options. And I started thinking about a restaurant menu. If you're looking at a menu del dia, like a normal menu in Spain, and you'd see perhaps four options on the menu, you might say, well, there's fish, there's steak, there's chicken. There's not much to choose between those four options. Or within these four options. Could you say both of those? Would the meaning be the same?
I wouldn't use within myself. I would say between. Mm-hmm. Choose between the four options. Because, in other words, I'm saying I have to choose A or B or C or D. Mm-hmm. So those are four discrete things, separate things, and I got to choose one. But within is the idea of inside. Like we said, within the house, there was a scratching sound, so inside.
So we went into the restaurant and there was a lovely smell within.
Within, inside the restaurant.
Exactly.
So if you mean to say, hay que elegir entre las tres opciones, if that's the meaning, definitely I would say between.
Me too.
I wouldn't say within for that.
I agree 100%. Moving on to the other two words, round and around. So round is usually used as an adjective. For example, let's sit at the round table over there. So in that example, round is the adjective describing the table. It's not square, it's round, R-O-U-N-D.
Yeah, I don't think you would never use around as an adjective, would you? No. You can talk about a round table, a round shape. You would never say an around table or an around shape.
Not in that example, you definitely wouldn't. So when do we use around?
Well, around is usually used as an adverb. So around, adjective, or could be adverb as well. But around is not an adjective. It's only an adverb. For example, when I first went to New York, I was really amazed to see the skyscrapers towering. That means they're very high, like towers, towering all around. So it's describing how they tower. It's an adverb, around.
Round, R-O-U-N-D, can be used as an adverb. For example, Reza turned the whiskey glass round and round in his hand. That's describing the way Reza turned the glass. You haven't had a glass of whiskey in a while, have you?
Oh, no.
You used to enjoy a glass of whiskey.
Oh, you're quite wrong. I turned that glass round and round, then eventually I drank it. After I turned it round and round in my hand, I did drink it.
When was the last time you had a glass of whiskey?
Ooh, about a month ago.
Okay.
When I was in Ireland, I had a nice Bushmills whiskey.
An Irish whiskey?
Yeah, of course.
Did you turn the glass round and round before you drank it?
I did, just to savour it, to get the full pleasure out of it.
And then you turned the bottle round and round to see how much was left. Yeah.
And the sad thing is, then I had to lie down in the bed and the room was turning round and round.
So yeah, the room was turning round and round. The round is the adverb describing the way the room was moving. Now, sometimes these two words are interchangeable, so it doesn't really matter. You can say, I was walking along the street with my girlfriend and I put my arm round her, or I put my arm around her. So in some cases, it doesn't really matter. Could you think of another example of that?
Yes, what about this? The moon goes round or around the earth. Round, around, it doesn't really matter. Because there we're using the words as prepositions. And when it's a preposition, it doesn't really matter if you say round or around. They're interchangeable.
Around can also mean an approximate time or an approximate place. For example, I might say to Reza, hey Reza, I'll meet you around here in around half an hour, which means more or less in this place, in more or less half an hour. I'll meet you around here or around the centre in around an hour or around half an hour. Más o menos.
Craig, there's a famous old proverb which goes, what goes around comes around. What do you understand by that? What goes around comes around.
Well, if you do something bad, it comes around to bite you in the arse, or bite you in the ass, as the Americans say. So that's really karma, isn't it? If you're good to people, then good things will happen to you. What goes around comes around. If you're bad to people and you're not very nice, that can also come around to you as the same thing. So what goes around comes around. What you receive, what you give what you receive. That's karma.
Well, we hope that's cleared up round and around a bit. And now we have an audio message from Lena about when to use ever and never.
Hello, Reza and Craig. I want to tell you that I really love your podcast. I enjoy them very much. And I have a question for you both because I am having problems using never and ever. Can you help me with that, please? I don't know. I am not sure. When should I use never and when should I use ever? Thank you very much, guys. I really love your work with the podcast. Bye.
Well, thank you very much, Lena. It's lovely to hear from you. Didn't she have lovely pronunciation, Reza?
Yes, Lena, thanks. Your pronunciation was very, very clear. Very good pronunciation.
So, ever and never. I don't think we've ever received such an interesting question. We use ever in negative sentences, and it's the opposite of always. For example, Reza, don't you ever insult Mickey Mouse again.
Okay, I'm sorry. I
Don't you
apologize.
ever. That's my mum. My mum used to say that to me. Don't you ever do that again, Craig. Don't you ever make a mess in your bedroom like that again.
I'll never make fun of Mickey again, I promise.
And here's some advice for you. If you ever, that means in your life in the future, if you ever go to Asturias, make sure you try fabada asturiana, which is bean stew. Have you ever tried that?
I have, and I love it.
Me too.
It's delicious.
So make sure you try that if you ever go to Asturias.
Well, never and ever are similar, but they are used in different ways. Usually never means nunca, so it's a negative word. For example, I've never been to Mexico. Unfortunately, although I'd love to go, and Craig as well.
Me
If
too.
anybody's thinking of inviting us, we'd love to go. But up to now, we've never been.
We are available to speak in any part of the world as long as you pay us to go and pay for the flight. We're happy to go and visit. But I've never been to Mexico either. Never, ever.
Ever tends to mean alguna vez, so a positive meaning or a question. For example, Craig, Have you ever been to Pamplona?
Yes, I have, but only for one day. I've never stayed there. So, yes, I've been there, but not for a long time, so I don't really know the city. Have you ever been?
I have, just for a day or two, and it was very nice, I have to say. I remember the tapas were really good.
Yeah, the tapas are excellent in Pamplona. You can use forever as an expression meaning until the end of time, but it's quite often used in a poetic way. For example, I will love you forever, or forever and ever, or I feel forever young. Wasn't that a song? Forever young? I will be forever young.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah.
So forever means until the end of time, but don't be surprised if people use it as an exaggeration. They don't really mean the end of time.
Right. So will you carry on? Will you keep on listening to this podcast? Oh, yeah, I'll listen forever. Well, no, you won't. You won't listen forever because that's until the end of time.
You can use never and ever together for emphasis. For example, I have never, ever seen such a big nose in all my life.
How dare you, sir?
There was a joke about that, wasn't there? It was a Monty Python film, wasn't there? He said, hey, big nose.
Big nose. Yeah, I think that was Life of Brian, yeah.
Life of
But
Brian.
that's what my ex-girlfriends used to say to me. I've never, ever seen such a big nose in all my life.
You sure it was nose, they said?
Yes, it was nose, Reza.
It was definitely nose.
It was nose.
Sorry for being nosy. But so never, ever. So the second word ever is emphasizing the first word never. Or you can repeat the word never. For example, you can say, you've gone too far. I will never, 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 never forgive you. And if you want, you can add just at the end an extra ever, confusingly. So you could say this, I will never, 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 ever forgive you.
Notice the stress that Reza put on the last ever there. So ever is very stressed to emphasize not only repeating the words, but also with the emphasis on the adverb.
That was repeating the word never with an extra ever at the end, if you want. Or you can repeat the words ever, but you have to say and. Strange, but true. That's the rule. So, for example, oh, darling, I'll love you forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So you say never, 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 just like that. But if you repeat ever, you got to put the word and in the middle. Ever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
And to emphasize this point, we have included in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/230, we've included a link to a song on YouTube from the 80s, the 1980s? 70s. Wow. Of a singer singing about forever and ever and ever. So if you want to listen to that song, there'll be a link in the show notes.
Craig, ever and never can often be used after superlatives. Can you give us an example?
Yes, for example, Coco, the dog. Coco is the quietest and most well-behaved dog I have ever met. There I'm using the present perfect because I'm speaking about my life and all the dogs I have ever met in my life. And the ever there emphasizes the fact that Coco is the quietest and most well-behaved dog I have ever met. You can invert that sentence and say, I have never, nunca, I have never met a quieter or more well-behaved dog than Coco. So that's the same sentence inverted and using never instead of ever.
Craig, what was the first job you ever had in your life?
That's a good question. The first job I ever had was in an insurance company. I sold car insurance in London a long time ago. What was your first job? What was the first job you've ever had?
Working in the shop where my mum worked, I had a few hours in a camera shop. And I must admit, I did it really badly because I didn't have the technical knowledge. And this is in the pre-digital age.
So how did it develop?
Oh, he got me there. I walked straight into that. How did it develop? He said, listeners, because you develop camera film.
In
Revelar.
those days, you would have developed camera film.
It's funny you should say that because, people left filming to get developed and we sent it off to a laboratory. We didn't do it in the shop, right? But we made the arrangements for people. Then it came back for the shop. Did we have a look at their private photos? Of course we did. Everybody does. Some of the photos people take would surprise you.
I bet they would, yeah.
In fact, some of the photos made me say, well, I never. Which means I've never seen anything like that before. Some of the photos and the people who had the photos seemed so innocent and so lovely. But let me tell you, some of the things they took photos of were not for children's eyes.
And did you ever sit there thinking about the royal family?
The royal family? No, never. Why?
One day my prince will come?
No. Why do you say that?
One day my prince will come. Prince.
Oh, Prince. He's got me again. He's got me again. Prince? No, Prince. P-R-I-N-C-E? No, P-R-I-N-T-S. Your Prince. What you get printed out. Oh, he got me.
One day my prince will come. What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten, Reza?
Strangest thing I've ever eaten.
Obviously in your life, because present perfect with ever.
Possibly spicy Chinese chicken feet.
Chicken feet?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't like them that much.
I can imagine them being very hard and crunchy.
Yeah, they were. And just knowing that there were feet and thinking, I wonder what these chickens have walked through, you know.
Probably chicken shit.
Yeah, I do.
You're very brave.
What about you? Have you ever eaten anything really strange?
I had a snake curry in Cambodia. That was very strange. Quite nice, very different. But the meat was a bit like chicken, a bit tougher than chicken. The curry was very strong, so I didn't really taste the meat of the snake.
Have you ever been to Disneyland, Craig?
Unfortunately not. I have never been to Disneyland, although that is definitely one of the destinations on my list.
With all your respect for Mickey and mine too, I'm surprised that you have never been there.
Well, I'm saving it for when I can really enjoy it. Here's a question for you. How long would you like this podcast to continue?
Forever and ever and ever and ever, etc.
Forever and ever. Me
As
too.
Demis Roussos said in his song.
Until the end of time, forever and ever. Well, now it's your turn to practice your English. What's the nicest place you've ever been to? Why don't you practice using ever and never and tell us what you think? Is there something that you've never eaten that you'd like to try? Would you like to try chicken feet like Reza or some snake, perhaps? Why not send us a voice message and practice the vocabulary in this podcast? Reza, where can they send their voice messages to?
Voice messages can go to www.speakpipe.com/English podcast.
You could also tell us where you're from, where you live now, because it might not be the same place, and also what you would like to talk about on a future podcast. If you want to contact us by email, I'm at craig@inglespodcast.com
or belfastreza@gmail.com.
Also, thank you to our wonderful patrons who continue to support us and the transcriptions we're providing every week. Special thanks to Bruno, our gold sponsor, who offers walking tours of Copenhagen through his company CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. And also in Rio, Bruno has another website for people looking at favela walking tours in that area of Rio. And more information can be found at favelavalkingtour.com.br. Walking tours by local guides in Rio, and they're very safe, and it also helps to put money into the favela community. More information on the website.
If you want to join our Patreon program yourself, you could do that for just $1 a month. That way you'll get instant access to recent transcriptions that have been lovingly transcribed by Angelica Bello from Madrid. Just go to www.patreon, that's patreon.com/English podcast.
And special thanks to Patreon supporters who have joined us this month. Our new sponsors, Beatriz Galashi and Alberto Valverde Conde. Hello and welcome to our Patreon group.
Don't worry, the rest of you. As you know, we haven't forgotten you. Your names, the old sponsors, are on the list in the show notes.
And if you join us next week, we'll be looking at legal English. Some legal terms and vocabulary that will help you understand programs like Suits, all those legal TV series that you may be watching on Netflix. So join us next week and learn some legal vocabulary. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.
You can use never and either together.
Can you say that again?
My pronunciation wasn't good, was it? Oh yeah, I got a bit tongue-tied there. You